is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 587. My name is Marshall. I'm winning Unlimited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from sunny Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, you back from your walk?
I am. I went on the daily constitutional, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully you're talking about your walk right now.
Yes. It is sunny today, but we're expecting 14 to 40 inches of snow, I believe, over the weekend. This is the same week where I went on a walk in a tank top and flip-flops and shorts.
Unbelievable. I was just guessing that it was sunny, but I actually thought maybe you were going to tell me it snowed or something. But 14 to wow, that is absurd. You got the shovel ready?
Oh yeah, I do.
To do your civic duty. It's beautiful here today as well. Really, really nice out and a perfect
new
day.
digs?
Yeah, I'm in my new apartment. The move has been, well, I mean, I'm here. I wouldn't say the move's completed. There's boxes everywhere still, but I've made sure to get everything set up so that I could do the stream and do the podcast and work on the watch videos and stuff, because, you know, work never ceases, and I did accomplish that task. So settled in enough to do the show. And this week we've got one of our favorite types of episodes, a Q&A episode. This is where our patrons will send us our questions for this, and we go through, and we end up getting such an awesome wide range of questions, from stuff like strategy stuff from the latest format all the way to life choices and ways to approach things in that way. And Luis and I just eat these up. We absolutely love them, and we're going to be doing one of those today. Before we get in there, I got to mention our sponsor. That's channelfireball.com. And, you know, you probably know Channel Fireball. They've been around for a long time now. They're one of the titans of the Magic website game. And I mean, I remember CFB all the way back when I first started playing and caring about things like, you know, getting my hands on singles for PTQs and reading strategy articles and stuff like that, was right around that time when CFB first started. So, you know, I've kind of grown up with CFB as well, but they're big now. There's a lot going on over at Channel Fireball. Not only the articles and the singles and the sealed product and the supplies and stuff that you would expect, but beyond that, it even goes further. There's really cool stuff like they've expanded the way that they purchase cards from you with U-Box We Buy or the traditional method. There's CFB Pro if you're interested in a deeper level of strategy content. That's a paid service, but you definitely get your money's worth out of it. And there's a lot of different ways to pay that make it very, very affordable. There's also more games that CFB is kind of riding along with now. Pokemon and Flesh and Blood come to mind. And then the latest and greatest over there is the, what do they call it again? Box breaks.
Box breaks, yeah.
Yeah. Box breaks is a cool way to participate in a stream where some sealed product is opened and you can buy a portion of it, and then you get to see what it is that you opened up and that you're going to get out of the deal. So a whole lot going on over at Channel Fireball. If you do check them out for any of these things that we mentioned, when you check out, if you use the affiliate code LR, it helps out the show, and we appreciate it. So thanks to CFB, and thanks to you for going over there on behalf of us. You can also support the show directly via the Patreon. I mentioned it a minute ago. One of the many things that we do on the Patreon is we solicit questions. If we're going to have a guest, I'll usually ask for extra questions. And then if we're going to do our Q&A episodes, they're really based on this. And we've just discovered that this is the best way to interact with our community. And that's one of the many things that Patreon's really good at. It's fully flexible. When you go over there, it's not like you're signing up for some big long-term commitment. You can do it however suits your life, even if those life situations change. You know, if all of a sudden you get some big promotion and you're like, hey, I want to help out my favorite creators, great. You know, if you find yourself on hard times, you can quit for a while, come back, you can lower your amount, you can do whatever you need. It's all transparent. And that's one of the reasons that we decided to go with Patreon back in the day, was because it's really up to you. You get to decide your own level of involvement. And patreon.com/limited resources is where you go for that. So before we get into the questions, I got a crack a pack, and I got one in my hand here, Luis. This is
nice.
This is number 3 of the one that Adam sent me for our seal that we're going to be doing over webcam, and I'm just using them for crack-a-packs too. So I figure get a little
classic double dippings.
Yeah, exactly. And let's see, what order do these cards go in? All right, yeah, these are weird. I don't really understand how this works. Okay, there we go. First card up is Dwarven Reinforcements. Sure, it's a card you can put into your deck, but it's definitely low priority, not where you want to be. Pilfering Hawk. Underperformed a little. Considering how many blue-based snow decks we end up playing, you'd think Pilfering Hawk would be quite a good card, but it's merely playable, and it's fringe at that.
Yeah, haven't been too impressed with the Hawk. It's better than it looked on first read, but then worse than it looked on second read.
Yeah, and I just don't find myself playing it quite often enough. Way Down in a Hole. Theme song from The Wire. We do love that one.
Not a card I really want to take early.
Not the card. All right, here's a card that you will want to take early. It is Shimmerdrift Veil.
There we go. This is, by my approximation, about the fifth best common or so.
Yeah, it's right in that 4 to 6 range, which is incredible. That is one thing we'll talk about, I'm sure, when we do the Sunset Show particularly, but one of the hallmarks of Kaldheim is if you're the type of person that enjoys the intricacies of understanding that you need to draft lands very highly, you'll love Kaldheim. If you're the type of person that goes, but it's a land, why am I excited about this? I want to draft some cool flyer or some artifact that does something or a neat attacker, then, Kaldheim is going to be less exciting for you. But yeah, there you go. Shimmerdrift Veil is our pick right now. Dread Rider, that's a 6 mana 3/7. No. Mammoth Growth, you can die to this card, +4/+4 until end of turn, but never pick it this highly. Annul. No. God's Hall Guardian. I do like this card, but it has slipped. This is the 3/6 with Vigilance. None of these are even on par, though. This pack has really kind of fallen off. And then our last common, my God, Luis, what happened here? Shackles of Treachery. Ugh.
This is the easiest Shimmerdrift Veil of my life so far.
Seriously. So let's get to the uncommons and see if something can compete. Yes, they can. First card out. Spirit of the Alder Guard. This is the 3 and a green 0/4 that lets you search up a snow land card and put it in your hand, and it gets +1/+0 for each other snow permanent you control.
Yeah, I'm a really big fan of the bear. It's both mana fixing, snow fixing, and it gives you like a 3/4 to 6/4 depending on what point in the game it comes out.
Totally. So Spirit of the Alder Guard, yes. Wow. Also excellent. Agar the Freezing Flame. Man, we drafted that deck last time, and by the way, I did play out those matches on my stream this week. And Luis, the Giants deck that we had, which was featuring triple Agar, and as well as the Frostpire Arcanist with 4 different targets, including 2 different draw spells and 2 different burn spells, was 3-0. That was in a traditional, and we crushed with that deck. It was completely absurd. And we've got an Agar here. Also, this is kind of the cool version, with the alternate frame. So that's kind of neat, I guess.
Yeah, I like
how do you
Agar.
match up Spirit and Agar?
I would take Spirit over Agar, pick one, pack one. I think that the cards are of comparable power level, and one's a gold card, and the other is not. So that's it's really just as simple as that. It's not more complicated than one of these cards is easier to cast and easier to play, and they're both very good.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. Divine Gambit is our last uncommon. This is the white sorcery that exiles an artifact, creature, or enchantment an opponent controls, but then they can put a permanent from their hand onto the battlefield. So that one's not really been playable.
Oh, I think the card's quite playable. Okay. I think it's not a spectacular card. Like, it is worse than Bound in Gold, in terms of like white removal and whatnot. But I think that playing 1 or even 2, I mean, they actually kind of get better in multiples, because when 1 is good, the odds that the next one's going to be good is also pretty high. You just have to play this card when they have just a couple cards left in their hand, and when mana is not really a constraint anymore. And most games do get to that point where they have 6 lands out. Yeah, maybe they will put something into play, but it's often things they could have cast or were going to cast on their next turn, or they just don't have anything to put into play. I think that card is worth playing. I don't think it's a premium card or anything. It's
interesting because that was my take early in the format, and I did take it and played it. And that was my experience. Okay, fine. I don't get to play this until later. But, it's important to remember that you're not like drawing them a card. It's a tempo loss. You're giving them mana for free.
Yeah.
and perhaps even fixing and perhaps even significant ramp. It is a significant cost. But I thought that's a price I'm willing to pay. And man, I just have not gone back. I don't know if it's that I felt that I didn't need to take it. I don't know if other people value it higher than I do, but I never end up with them in my pile anymore. And you know what the weird thing is? Nobody ever plays them against me. I can't remember when somebody's cast Divine Gambit against me. So that's what led me to kind of go, yeah, I'm just not going to, I'm not going to consider this a playable card. Because if I never played and nobody ever plays it against me, it can't really be that great, right? Or playable for that matter. I mean, I don't know.
I think it's the kind of card that scares a lot of people off. So
I see.
I think if you were to draft and play at like GP Day 2 / Pro Tour level competition, you would see the number of Divine Gambits getting played go up. Okay. But like I said, it's not a hugely important card. I do think it's fine though.
All right, now we've got 2 cards before our rare. One of them is, of course, our land, and it is Volatile Fjord. So there you go. It's a good one, land, but not going to keep up with Spirit. We also got a foil Draugr Thought Thief. So no. But boy, this is going to put you to the test here. Not really, I don't think. But what you said about the gold card situation with Agar, you said, well, Agar and Spirit are about comparable power level, so I'm going to take Spirit. Well, what if I shattered that paradigm and said that we opened Immersturm Predator?
So it's that red-black dragon, so 4 mana for a 3/3 dragon, and then it becomes tapped, it gets a +1/+1 counter, and you sack a creature to get it indestructible and tap it. Yeah, I would just take the dragon. The dragon it's a ridiculous card. The awkward part about taking the dragon is I think that you're probably in the 80% range to have it in your final deck, and you're about 30% to play red-black.
I would say 15. Yeah, I never play straight red-black. Yeah, because you know where I actually end up is the deck that you zeroed in on early in the format, which is like the Grixis Snow deck.
Yeah.
Then I'm that if I would, by the way, definitely take Immersturm Predator over Spirit. I'm not 100% sure that the numbers would bear that out, but Immersturm Predator is one of those cards that feels unbeatable when it gets played. There's narrow answers that you need for it, and if you don't have one, it smashes you so fast that you just don't get to play. But I would be thinking of trying to go towards that direction, towards a 3-color snow deck, and get the Immersturm Predator in there. I don't think I would ever take this and go, red-black it is, Rakdos.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be red-black. What I would probably do if I took the Raider first, or the Dragon rather, first pick, is just see what the next couple picks are. And sure, I will be very likely to take a good green card or a good snow card, if that's what's there. But if my next couple picks have good aggressive red and black cards, you can draft black-red, and it is very good in that deck. Okay, yeah, and that, of course, is all an attempt to try to make sure that you get to play the card too, right? Yes, for sure. But like I said, my initial guess was maybe I think actually revise it a little lower. I think you're probably 20% to play red-black and 80% to play not base red-black, but just have this card in your deck still. Right. That makes sense. Okay. By the way, that's a pretty decent little pack for my sealed deck, isn't it? I got a dual land, an Agar, and a Predator, and a Spirit. And a Snow Bear to tie it all together? Yeah, I'm thinking I might know where that one's going. Okay, so let's get into the questions. We're not going to do Patreon question of the week for obvious reasons because they kind of all are this time. So let's jump in. First question up is from Chris Fisher, who says, do you see Foretell as a mana smoothing mechanic like Scry or Cycling? I think that that's a good way to describe Foretell. It's not a card advantage mechanic. It doesn't give you card advantage. Mm-hmm. And it's not really a mana cheating mechanic because there's a couple exceptions, like a Struggle for Scamvar, where if you foretell then cast the spell, you're paying less overall. And there's a couple that go the other way, like the more expensive ones tend to only shave 1 mana off, but of course you're getting it a turn early. But I think overall the effect Foretell has and what you can kind of view it as is it's a mechanic that makes you curve out better. You're less likely to waste mana on turn 2. You're less likely to waste mana on turn 3 and so on, because instead of looking at a hand and hoping, I hope I have a 2, a 3, and a 4 drop, you could have 3 4-drops, but then be able to foretell one on turn 2, cast it turn 3, then cast your other 4-drop on turn 4, and you kind of used your mana every turn. So I think seeing it as a mana smoothing mechanic makes a lot of sense to me. And we generally, I find the formats that I'm happiest with
include one or two of the following ingredients. One of them is this mana smoothing, and the other one is which might also be considered mana smoothing. I'm not sure, but it's cards that like flashback or morph that let you do something small early or big late. It doesn't necessarily have to be both. The one thing I do wonder about Foretell as a mechanic is it a little too complicated for the benefit that we get out of it? Like, I really like the mechanic. Like, I found it really interesting. But I do wonder if I'm a little bit newer to draft, if I jump in and Foretell's a kind of a lot to track. And I haven't actually played much Foretell live, like only a little bit. So
I can't speak to the paper Foretell experience, but I feel like we have this conversation every week where you're defending the theoretical new players against things
I do feel a certain role to do that. You know, I really do. I mean, like, you know how it is. If you start to ignore them, then in 5 years we don't have, like, the game shrinks, you know, significantly.
Yeah. I think it's good to have a keep an eye on that sort of thing. Foretell does not strike me as too fiddly of a mechanic. Like, you pay your 2, you play it, and then I think in paper, you're going to have people forgetting they've foretold a card and like not play it for 3 turns and like, oh crap, I foretold this card. But on Arena, it's pretty in your face. Like, the foretold cards are just basically sitting there right next to your hand with like a little border. Yeah. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Where I look at a mechanic like cycling, and it's a little more straightforward in my mind, but also maybe I'm just more used to it. I don't know. Next one comes from Chris, another Chris, who says, hey guys, I'm a big fan of using all my mana efficiently as possible. But I've also seen pro Magic players be a lot more sparing with removal than I am, especially when playing aggro. I feel that if I don't remove a blocker, my attacks will stall and the game will slip away. But at the same time, I then find myself unable to deal with larger late game threats. Any thoughts or advice? Thanks, Chris from York. Great question, Chris. This is a big one.
Yeah, I actually would have agreed with Chris more a couple years ago, where you really were tested on like making sure you conserve your removal for the threats that really matter. We've probably done episodes where we say like those exact things. I don't actually think that's true in Modern Limited anymore. All the threats are great. There's also usually a decent amount of removal. You can't just ignore things in like, you know, if you want to go real far back, you know, really old school kinds of drafts, you know, 10 plus years ago, or even longer, yes, sometimes you have to let their 3/3 hit you, you know, their Hill Giant that they played on turn 4 hit you a few times, because if you use up your one good removal spell, they'll play their 1/4/4 flyer and you'll lose. Mm-hmm. These days, 4 mana 3/3 that can get unblockable is not even close to being good enough, you know? And the power level of cards is just very high. You can't ignore 4-drops anymore. That's just not really a world we live in. So I understand, you know, what Chris is asking, and like I think it's good to think about things that way. Like, do I really need to use this removal spell? Am I pulling the trigger too early? But the way things are these days, like you're gonna make more mistakes by trying to conserve removal than use it because everything is just so good.
Yeah, to me, the tension isn't between do I use my removal or not necessarily. It's more about, can I leverage my creatures to accomplish the same goal? And have I put other cards in my deck that are lower priority picks than actual removal, like pump spells, that can help me leverage what I already have? Like most aggro decks play quite a few creatures because that's kind of the name of the game. So then you'd like to have some number of the pump spells that you can pick up, say, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th pick versus the removal spells you had to take 1st through 5th pick or whatever. And that way you can kind of have the best of both worlds. But this is also why you have to really focus the deck down and not have too much nonsense. Because if you have a good curve of creatures, you have your removal spells. There's going to be precious few slots left over for things like equipment, pump spells, etc. And that to me is more of the mental gymnastics that I'm doing when I'm playing, is not just can I afford to use the removal here lest I lose to something later, but is there another way? Like, could I trade? Would that be okay with me? Did I put combat tricks and stuff in my deck that can act as removal if I'm aggressive enough? Matthew says, one thing I've noticed I tend to do is draft for the deck / archetype instead of looking at the cards in front of me. For instance, I went 0-3 with what I felt like was a pretty good black-white play 2 spells deck, but I didn't have some key pieces. Mainly, I didn't have Etheria or the 1/1 that gets 2 counters. I notice LSV in his draft videos does a good job of making picks with X card With X card is good. With Y and or Z card comes up. So it goes up for me. In other words, he's saying that you're changing your pick orders as you go. How do you get into that mindset more? And Matthew also followed up and said, also, I asked this question before I figured out that black-white is basically just bad, but I'm still interested in the answer.
Well, I agree that black-white's bad.
Yeah.
So it is tricky. I mean, what we're describing is actually just the skill of drafting in a lot of ways, where, look, if drafting was as easy as looking at just a gigantic pick order, it would be a lot less fun. And that's just not something that, we always would be super interested in doing all the time. But the part of the reason that draft is so fun is you're drafting and you're like 7 or 8 picks in, and then all of a sudden now, Battlefield Raptor, the 1-mana 1/2, you're going to take that over Bounding Gold because you have 2 really good pieces of equipment and a Clarion Spirit. Or all of a sudden, Priest of the Haunted Edge, you've got a bunch of Snowlands and a couple priests. Now, Rise of the Draugrs is going to be a much higher pick than something that would be a higher pick otherwise. Mm-hmm. And when to make those decisions and how to make those decisions, it's hard for me to give you advice that will help you without seeing those things play out. But one of the really good pieces of news is if you're thinking about things in this way, you're well on your way to making those decisions better. What you want to look at, and this can be tough in time drafts, but you can just still take your time to think about it as best you can. You look at kind of like what the cards you have are, and then you start getting acquainted in the set with what are like mini combos. Like a good example is Way Down and Priest of the Haunted Edge. Mm-hmm. I consider that like a mini combo. It's a cheap creature that puts itself in the graveyard. It's almost impossible for this card not to go to the graveyard, in the course of a game. In fact, if you want it to go, it just can go. Mm-hmm. There's no variance there. And then a Way Down requires you to have a creature in your graveyard, but if you do, it's a very efficient removal spell. Once I've got a couple priests, Way Down starts looking pretty good. In fact, it moves way up, as it were, in my pick order, and I want like 2 of them. And that's not the only such thing, like Goldvein Pick and Battlefield Raptor. The list goes on. And even if you have a hard time like putting these together on the fly, you can start to understand which of these really, really pops off together and when you should be prioritizing them. And that will help you later in the draft kind of start to even unconsciously do it. You don't have to think about it that much, but you're like, oh, I've got two pieces of equipment. I really need to get some 1/2 flyers.
Yeah, totally. And like you said, with those mini combos, you get 1/2 of it and you're just flagging the other one when it shows up as, hey, that's something I should be considering here, right? It's also interesting that like part of the way that my mind works when I'm drafting decks like this, the more archetype driven stuff versus raw power level, is you'll often come to a pick that's, okay, there's a good card, and then there's a card that goes well in my deck that's not normally as good of a card, right? And when you weigh those out, what you're really trying to do is sort out how important is the not normally as good card for my deck. Because there's some archetypes that really push you towards needing specific pieces to make the archetype sing. And there's others that it's much better just to take a more powerful card that's, close enough. And that's really getting into the super nitty gritty of what a draft archetype is and, when you should commit and when you should take the more powerful card. The thing that can break that symmetry as well, by the way, is that a lot of times the super synergistic cards wheel. And so you can sometimes just have the best of both worlds. If you can take the powerful card and get the other one back, you have to be able to judge, how likely is this card to come back and how important is it for me? Because sometimes you just got to eat your vegetables and take the cards you need, but sometimes you don't.
I mean, that's part of the reward for figuring out these combos and taking use of them, right? Is you get third pick caliber cards on the wheel because no one else can use them. Exactly.
And when you can position yourself that way, I mean, that's how you win drafts, period. Next one comes from Celso, who says, with the constant release of new sets, does the drafting experience of each set feel incomplete? Like everyone's trying to solve the format so fast before it goes away, thus making each draft environment feel rushed because there was not enough time for the set to breathe? I would say no. I mean, if you look at the major releases, the expert level sets, whatever, the block sets, there's tons of time for those. I mean, we had Zendikar Rising for, it felt like half a year, right? I mean, it was forever. And then the interesting part is yeah, this happens a little bit more with the sets that come out less frequently. Think modern Horizons or, modern whatever master sets and those type of things, Time Spiral remasters coming out. These type of things, most people only get to draft these once or twice. 0, 1, or 2 times is like, that's where all the answers were when we did a survey a few years ago about these types of sets. So it's not that common that people actually just go nuts. And those definitely have that vibe where it's kind of just like, get in and hang on for the ride. That's why we do the set primer shows for those, because we know that you're not going to be able to understand every nuance of it. And usually when we do the show, we don't understand the nuances yet of that set. But we want to at least give you some signposts to go, okay, I'm going to go in a direction. And those do feel a little rushed. But the other ones, no, I feel like they have plenty. In fact, they might have too much time to breathe given the way that digital has changed everything, right? Particularly Arena, where people can just draft. That was available on Magic Online before as well, but it was a bigger hurdle where Arena's cheaper to draft and then also just more accessible to more people. If anything, I think that they wish they could probably release twice as many sets in a year. It's just, I don't know how you could do that with R&D or whatever.
Yeah, that would probably tax the people working there in terms of making the sets, and then also the consumers to some degree of like fatigue. But I don't feel sets go too quickly. In fact, we're kind of bad at answering this in the sense that we just interface so much with Magic that like, if we got to pick how often sets came out for like our podcast purposes, we would love a new set to come out every month. That would be better. So
what do you think? I'm going to parlay this question a little. What would be ideal? Like, let's say Wizards could develop an algorithm that made really good sets consistently, like solids. They could just hit a button and it would spit out a good new set.
That'd be a really different world from where we are now.
How often would they hit that button? Roughly.
I think that about.
Is it 2 months? Every 2 months? Is it
about
3?
Every 2 months is probably
1.5?
About right. Maybe less though. And I would be surprised if it was more.
Okay. Yeah, I find that interesting. It's particularly for digital, right? Because like keeping up with everything on paper would be too much. Andrew says, my semi-regular play group, which only ever drafts together, has ground to a halt since the start of the pandemic. Oh, I feel you there, Andrew. We started to dabble in Commander because we found multiplayer platforms online that support the format, and it's been the only way to get together. Listening to the show for a few years now, I've heard a couple of anecdotes of Luis talking casually about playing Commander with friends. I'm curious to hear if you've played too, Marshall, and if so, what are some of your favorite Commanders? And yes, I have played Commander. I used to have a couple of Commander decks. I never had a play group to play, so I would play against random people at GPs or I don't know. It just felt kind of cool to have a deck. Ultimately, the multiplayer experience isn't something I'm a super huge fan of. I don't like the pace of it, and I also have a hard time with the political stuff. I think Commander is one of the greatest things that's ever happened with Magic, and I think that it's the modern encapsulation of what Magic was when I played it when it first came out, which was that you had a deck. Like everybody had their one deck. It wasn't the type of thing that you needed to keep up on meta games. It was like, what cards do you have and what deck did you put them in? And then when a new set would come out, since we were younger, we couldn't just go buy boxes or whatever. You'd get a pack or two or trade or whatever, and you'd slowly just add stuff to the deck or upgrade it as it went. And that's the exact experience that you have with Commander, where there's a lot of identity and self-expression tied up in your Commander deck. It kind of says what kind of a Magic player you are. And when a new set comes out, it's something exciting because they might have a sweet new card for your deck, and maybe you can rotate out something that you're not as excited about anymore. And it also gives you something long-term to build where you can, build up the cards for the deck first, and then after that, maybe you can get the really cool versions of them that you like, or whatever, or the better cards that you couldn't get at first, that type of a thing. So I'm a huge fan of Commander as a format, but for me playing it, I found that Canadian Highlander was suited my the way that I play a lot better, which has a lot of similarities in that it's a 100-card singleton. And by the way, I think singleton Magic is like the best. It is so awesome. I love singleton. Yeah, you like basically never repeat. Games are just so much more varied. And these 100-card singleton formats amplify that by being singleton, so there's one of each card maximum outside of basic lands, and then there are 100 cards rather than the 60 or the 40 we play in limited. And so, the draws are very varied, and you're going to really have a hard time repeating the same experiences. But Canadian Highlander is just a constructed format. You just play like 20 life, no commanders, it's just constructed, but with different build rules. And so I kind of got drawn to that. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to play really this whole entire time for years now. And, the bunch of the people on coverage had Canadian Highlander decks for a while, and it was really fun. But yeah, it's just tough because, it's really about the people around you. But my favorite commanders I had a Animar one that was really sweet. All these, value deck or whatever from I called it Rug at the time, but now we call it Teamer. And I think if I were to build another, I would build something Sultai. I think what's his name Banded Commander? The jerk, the 3-mana, you can't draw, target my stuff guy.
Oh, Leopold?
Yeah. I think he might be.
I would hope so.
Yeah, you would hope so, wouldn't you? Andrew also says, I have a follow-up. Have Jimmy Wong and Josh Lee Kwai invited you and Luis to be on an episode of Game Nights in the past? And if they haven't, would you accept it? If they did, that would be epic. You went on there, right?
I have not. No,
I haven't either. They never invited me.
Same.
I don't know why they hate us, Luis. We love Jimmy and Josh too. It's just it's soul crushing. It's like why we can't play.
I think the fact that we are not active Commander players probably has something to do with it.
Okay, I have one counterpoint.
That Ben and your general attitude.
Ben Stark.
Was Ben on there?
Yeah.
Oh,
the sick part too is they reached out to me and said, "Hey, can you ask Ben for us?" I was like,
that's
"Sure."
amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of a beat, but whatever. I love those guys. They do just an absolutely fantastic job. And if you don't know who they are, Jimmy and Josh do the Command Zone podcast, and they do Game Nights as well, and a bunch of other stuff. And they're just top tier content creators and top tier members of the community, and good friends as well. Next one comes from Jacob, who said, or who is your commander actually, Luis? I remember you and I played commander once on the Magic Cruise, and you smashed me with some Dimir deck, but I don't remember.
Yeah, Dralnu Lichlord, the 5-mana 3/3 that you can tap to flashback spells.
That's sweet.
I enjoyed that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I did have a commander deck for a while that was Guafa Hazid Profiteer. It was just pure nonsense. If you don't know that card, look it up, and you'll be like, okay, this is silly. Jacob, with our next question, says, in the recent Arena Open, I found myself making a lot of misplays due to nerves, and often find the same thing happens in Premier drafts. Usually, one wrong pick or one misplay creates a domino effect of nerves that ends up costing me games. How do you recommend overcoming my nerves in these types of situations?
I think that nerves it's this kind of thing that to some degree just takes time and practice to get out of.
Yeah.
But here's the good thing is, it's not time and practice that will go unused in other aspects of your life. Mm-hmm. If you can kind of keep your cool in situations that are high pressure, that's great. Like, look, we're not spies, or most of us are not firefighters or whatever. We don't deal with this on a day-to-day basis, but knowing how to keep your calm in a situation that's tense, or where the stakes are high, all those things are useful because those will happen over the course of your life. And I find that there's a couple ways you can do that. It just kind of depends on each person. You can try to, like the old saying, dance like nobody's watching. Like, you can just kind of try to get into your own head and say, like, I'm playing against my opponent. No one else matters. No one else can affect the match. Mm-hmm. We're the only two people here. Let's do it. Other people just kind of, they enjoy being in the spotlight. And if you can kind of think about it like, wow, this is kind of cool. All these people want to watch me. And this is the sort of thing that, like, these people are here, they're watching me. They're not going to judge me. I'm the person who's playing, and I don't have to worry about them. But enjoying the fact that the people are watching you can definitely help. I know some people, how many content creators / Magic players are where they are because they like an audience, right?
Right. Totally.
Like Marshall's a huge ham. So,
oh God, yeah.
So it's, you kind of have to tackle it whichever way works for you. But I have had a lot of different experiences where I've seen people kind of grow out of this. I remember one of the guys I lived with for a while in college, Ian. He used to get really nervous when playing like matches where people were watching, like, you know, and he really wanted to qualify for the Pro Tour, and he would get nervous playing for top 8 or in the top 8 of these PTQs. And at one point I'm like, Ian, look, you're spending a lot of time and energy to qualify for the PT. Do you think if you go to the PT, no one's ever going to watch you play there too? Like, this is just part and parcel of the whole experience. And I think you do want this experience, and I know that you'll enjoy it. So I think that, you know, you've got to really just kind of reconcile with the fact that this is going to happen. Don't dread it. You know, don't think, oh man, is this the round where everyone's going to watch me? If I do well in this tournament, people are going to start watching me. Just think about it like, hey, you can just do the best you can. Play against your opponent. You know, if you do a good job and play really well, people will be impressed. Like that kind of stuff is cool. And he ended up being really good playing a bunch of PTs. So
yeah,
it's the sort of thing. It's tough to get over. I'm not going to say it's not.
Yeah, for me, some things that would help with that are, there's two things that come to mind. One is expectations, right? If you go into it like putting all this pressure on yourself to win the tournament or to win the draft or to qualify for the thing or whatever, you know, you could really kind of get stuck on that, where then when it starts not happening, or you take a step away from that by making a mistake, that all of a sudden the pressure starts to build because you're like, no, I got to win. I got to do this. You know, your expectations should be aimed much earlier in the process than that, meaning your expectation should be, I will do the best that I can do here, not I'm going to win. Right. And if the best that you can do involves a few mistakes when it comes to nerves at this point, then that's just where you're at. And, you know, you'll find that if you take that pressure off of yourself, you won't feel the nerves as much, and then you won't make as many mistakes because you're like, well, I'm expecting to make a couple of mistakes because of nerves. That's okay. I'm still, you know, going to do the best I can to play and do well. And then you'll find that you actually make fewer of them, which is kind of it's kind of self-fulfilling in a way. And then
once you give yourself permission to make mistakes, you make less mistakes.
You might make fewer. It's very weird, right? Yeah. And then the other thing that I have found helped me if I felt a little bit nervous is that I tend to dial in too much on the thing I'm doing at that moment or that exact moment. And what I like to do is picture myself just a little further down the line in my day. You know, like maybe you're going to have dinner later that night with your family or significant other or friend or something like that. Or maybe there's a walk that you're going to go on later that doesn't have anything to do with this high pressure thing that you're undertaking, this tournament or, you know, for my stuff, work and stuff like that. And it helps me kind of even out to remember this is part of my day, but I have a day, you know, like this isn't the end of all things, right? Kind of no matter what happens, I'm just going to I'm going to be done with this, and then I'm going to go out to dinner and I'm going to read a book and I'm going to go to bed, and, you know, and it helps me kind of even things out a little bit because I can get too dialed in on the moment as well. And that'll dial that down a little bit so that you won't feel that pressure as much, Jacob. Good luck with it. This is something that ultimately, I think the best answer is what Luis said up front, which is that you just kind of have to go through it. I've seen this a million times covering GPs for so long, where the first time people are playing for winning in a GP top 8, and particularly the first time that they're playing in the quarters and the semis and the finals, you can just see it. They're just super nervous. They're really amped up about it. And when it's Luis or Martin Yuza or somebody who's done this 100 times, they don't feel it at all. And it's because they've been there. You know, the people say, act like you've been there before. It's kind of hard to do unless you've been there before, but it does help afterwards. The one thing that I will say that I've seen as well, and I do not recommend this, is I've also seen people reach some sort of finish line for themselves that isn't the actual finish line, and then completely absolve themselves of all, you know, they'll make that top 8 of the GP, and they're like, I don't care if I lose now because I top 8 of the GP. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here, right? And I'm like, no. These things don't come up very often. Like, you need to really, you should hold yourself like, look, I really want to make a push while I'm going to capitalize on this. And again, keep yourself calm, but like, don't be that person who's just like, I don't care anymore at all. Like, that's not, these opportunities don't come up as often as you think.
Oh man. I mean, when you tell, you know, war stories with the Magic pros, we always want to play against the I'm just happy to be here guys in the top 8. Like, those guys just never win.
They're looking for a reason to lose and kind of relieve themselves of that pressure. Yeah.
It's so funny because, and this goes to like a broader point that I've noticed is it is true that, you can't just will things into being. You know that book, The Secret, where it's like, if you believe hard enough, it'll happen. Like, that's obviously just nonsense. That's not how things work.
Right.
But there's a lot more of that than people also give credit to, where if you really want something, you'll find ways to get it. If you really, if you are just happy to be here, you're not going to push yourself in the ways you need to push yourself to do well enough to do well in the top 8, to win the top 8. Yeah,
there's lots of little tricks you can do with your brain to help with that. In basketball, this comes up sometimes too, because there's a natural flow to sports with humans in it for whatever reason, that when one team gets ahead, they kind of let off the gas a little bit, and then the team that's behind tends to push harder. And so you'll often see in basketball games that one team will get up by 10, 12 points. Then at some point the other team evens it up and then either surpasses them, or then they kind of duke it out for a while. And, they say it's a game of runs, right? Where it's like, the scoring tends to happen in kind of these clumps, and it creates these gaps. And, what I found is that if you can get yourself into the mentality of, like, kind of regardless what the score is, if you're intimidated, if you're behind, even if you're ahead, to just say, you know what, I might lose today, but I'm going to give them hell, right? I'm going to go out scrapping, and it is not going to be easy for them, even if they're better at me than this. I am going to make their life difficult. And if that's all I end up doing, then so be it. But like, I am not rolling over. Like, you are going to have to beat me at this. And if you do, then I'll shake your hand and say, nice job. But you are going to have to do it, and that to me is like the perfect kind of competitive mode to be in. Because then, like, if I sit across from you, Luis, let's say it's a quarterfinals of a GP, and I'm intimidated, I'm out of my element, I know you're better than me, I know I don't have a great chance to beat you necessarily. These are all things that make me want to give up, right? That make me want to go, yeah, you got it. I don't know. I can't, I'm never going to beat you. Good job. You're the one that wins these, not me. I'm lucky just to be here. If I have the attitude of, you're going to have to scrap, like, I am going to do every damn thing in my power to try to beat Luis Scott-Vargas at this. And then if, understanding that, he's better than me and is likely to beat me, well, then that's where I want to be, and I tell you, I know that it's the exact opposite of what you just said, Luis, which is you want to play the person who's just happy to be here. This is a person you don't want to play, right? It's not that they're better than you at Magic, but they are just going to make you earn it. And, you want to be that person, even if you can't be one of the best in the world. Okay. I'm going to change this next one a little bit, Luis. This comes from Soren, who says, what character concept would you be if you were both D&D characters? Now, I know that in your group, you're actually what is it called?
The DM.
The DM. You're the DM for it. Now, I am curious what kind of character you would be, but what I want you to do is I want you to design me as a D&D character, because I don't really know enough about it anyway. And plus, I know you'll just torch me or whatever.
Like, I'm loath to admit it, but in some ways, I feel like I would be I represent in a lot of ways a bard, which is kind of like, they're a jack of all trades. They play music. I'm not a very musical person, so that part's not really me, but they are definitely the nonsense center of attention. Like, they're good with persuasion, and they're good with confidence and intimidation and all of it, and charming people, all these things. And I feel like that definitely has a lot of aspects to it.
Yeah.
I think for you, Marshall, I actually
are they considered the buffoons of D&D?
Yes, they are.
Oh, interesting. All right.
To give you like a little bit of context, the Twitch mod Squirrel Loot, who's in all our channels, he's a bard. So that should help nail down a little more like the scope of the buffoonery.
That actually frames it beautifully. Having met Squirrel Loot before, now I get it. Okay. Yeah.
I think for you, I actually see shades of a paladin, because paladins are like that. They're lawful. They're very much like, they care about rules. They care about justice. I think you care about those things a lot.
I do.
And they try to help other people, which I think you do as well. They're they don't try to win fights on cunning as much. And I feel like you're pretty straightforward and pretty direct. So I don't know. I see a lot of aspects of that, and they also have, just giant sticks up there.
Wow. All right. Well, I asked for it, I guess. All right. I'm a paladin and you're a bard. The perfect podcast combo.
Well, I mean, you got to have a straight man. You're the straight man.
I am that. Yeah. All right. This next one comes from Atipong, who says, other than Vintage Cube, what draft formats do you play when they rerun on MTGO and why? I don't play any.
I played when they rerun it on Magic Online the most is Invasion Planeshift Apocalypse Draft, where Gabby can attest to this. I think I did about 35 in the week they were there, maybe 30.
Wow.
I jammed 3 or 4 a day. Like
you love that I mean, that's like one of your all timers, right?
Fact or Fiction, Fire Ice,
Repulse,
Exclude, Allied Strategies, Probe. Like, do I need to go on? Like, I think I've already
Is
laid
this
out
the format with Jilt?
Jilt, yep.
Oh, Jilt. That's cool.
Flame Tongue Kavu. Like, every card in the format was a 2-for-1. All the creatures were abysmal. 5 mana 3/3 was just a card you played all the time. And all the spells were just off the hook insane.
So you're just in your wheelhouse, like exactly where you want to be.
This is exactly what I want to do always.
I don't do any of those anymore, ever. When they bring old formats back, I never draft them. My reasoning is that when I did it, I remember being excited about it, but then the experience didn't live up. And there was a couple of reasons for that. One of them was that I felt like I needed to re-ramp myself up on the format. Oh, that was this format. Okay. Oh, and that was with this deck. All right. You know, just sort of to get acclimated. That took like a draft just to remember kind of what was going on there. And I don't want to grind them. Like, I don't want to sit there and like do draft of these old things. So that, you know, is a big cost when the first draft is kind of just figuring out what the format was again. But then also, you know, in the formats with the really cool, memorable decks, just everybody in that queue wants to draft the really cool, memorable deck. And I always end up with like green, black, boring, you know, and I don't like that. So for me, I'm much more focused on cube and whatever the recent formats are than going backwards. I found that my appetite to go backwards in time and draft formats is pretty low. The exception I would make are for particularly nostalgic formats to me, like Rise of the Eldrazi or Innistrad or stuff like that. Then I would do that. And there are a few others. I would probably do Dominaria, but like, you know, like there was whatever Theros, and I remember liking that, Theros, whatever it's called. You know, on Arena, I didn't even do one. I just kept doing call time. So I don't know. For me, I'm just more focused on those. I think this also comes from coverage habits where I didn't really feel like I could spend my study time, if you will, playing formats that weren't relevant to what I was going to be covering or talk about on the podcast.
I would just recommend doing what I do, which is remember exactly how to draft all of these old formats all the time.
Yeah. You teach me that and I'll do it. Justin says, are there any particular valuable cards that you are planning or hoping to add to your collection?
I am going to probably pick up a bunch of the old frame cards from Time Spiral Remastered. Like,
so cool.
I think that they're like, I'm certainly going to push to include a bunch of those in our cube. You know, Gabby's got a cube that we kind of maintain, though it actually needs updating pretty badly at this point. And I think the old frame cards are just going to look awesome there. I'm going to pick up some of the ones I want for vintage because, you know, I think things like Foil Ponder or Old Frame Ponder are going to run me more than I would want probably. But I just think that those things are so cool that it's going to be hard for me to resist.
Yeah, for me, I don't think there's any. The only old cards that I really am interested in are ones that are nostalgic to me. And I've kind of got the ones that I want from that. So I don't think there's any purchases that I'm looking for on the horizon as far as that goes. But that Ponder is absolutely absurd. Andrew says, I would love to hear a somewhat in-depth heuristics regarding a decision to mulligan.
Okay, I can tackle that. That's a great question because mulliganing is probably one of the places where most people could get like near the most gains for the least amount of work. Here's a really good heuristic for limited as we're talking to limited. The number one heuristic is don't mulligan. Don't press the mulligan button. Just don't do it. And that may sound like I'm exaggerating to prove a point because that's what I'm doing, but it is really true that you should keep probably more hands than you are keeping, because in limited, it's so hard to win a card down that I am going to keep way more 5-landers than you might think. And I'll keep more 1-landers than you might think too. I'm not, advocating snapping off 1-landers on the play with, a bunch of 3-drops, but a 1-land hand on the draw with multiple 2-drops, I'm often going to keep that because your win percentage drops off a cliff when you go to 6. And I think that the odds, in a normal deck, you're like, around 75% to draw your second land on the draw by turn 2, assuming you've got a hand that then works well. You can't keep a hand that works poorly. And that leads me to my first actual heuristic, though the first one is not a joke. You really just shouldn't mulligan. It's don't keep hands that are 2 things away from being functional. So an example is a 1-land hand that needs to draw 2 lands. Well, that's just clearly not good enough. A hand that has, let's go back to that 5-land hand example. I would mostly keep a 5-card hand, a 7-card hand that has 5 lands, a 2-drop, and a 4-drop. Most of the time, that's just going to be good enough. But if one of those cards is, especially like the 2-drop, is not of a color you can cast with those 5 lands, now not only do you need to draw more action, because that hand already did need to draw more action, that was just kind of the basis of the hand, it also needs to draw a land of the right color to cast one of your spells. That's 2 things. That's just not what I'm in for. Yeah. I don't want to need to get bailed out by drawing multiple things. Another example would be you have a hand that has a piece of equipment, a pump spell, or removal spell, and 4 lands. Okay, I'm going to keep that some amount of the time. But again, once you make that hand into a 2-lander, all of a sudden I'm looking at a hand that needs to draw lands, but also needs to draw creatures, and that's just a bridge too far.
Yeah. One of the ways that I think about mulliganing, and one of the reasons why I am really averse to mulliganing and have been for a long time now, is there's a payoff for drafting and building your deck well. If you have a good curve, if you have good mana, one of the things you get to do is keep hands that other people might not. If you've been diligent about not putting double mana spell that you can't really afford to, or in your in the color that's the lesser, let's say you have like a 10/7 mana base. If you're being a little diligent about cutting, say, a double mana spell 4-drop or 3-drop in your minor color, these are where those decisions pay off for you. The other way that you can view it is, remember, when you keep your opening hand, I think that the one heuristic that's very flawed that a lot of people use is, this hand can't win. This hand doesn't do anything. What you really should be looking at in limited is this hand plus 3 to 6 cards. And if you were to take, let's say, at minimum 3 cards or 4 cards off the top of your library and add them to that hand on average, would that be a hand that was functional and that could win a game or do something? Of course, you're doing this without the knowledge of what those cards actually are, but we have decent numbers on, like what Luis was saying. We ran it through the hypergeometric calculator to figure out the odds on play draw versus if you're going to draw a land. You can also do it on specific number of outs, meaning that, like, if you need a specific color of land, you can do that. They're very high. Hitting your 3rd land drop on the draw, you're high 80% to have hit a land by that point with three draw steps. So, that to me is what I'm keeping. I'm keeping the 7 cards in front of me plus 4 to 5 that are on top of my library, with the knowledge that I built my deck in a way that is actually matters to the board and does these things. A good way to think about it is, if you're thinking about how does this hand win or what is this hand's plan, that's more of a constructed mindset than a limited mindset. Yes.
In limited, it should be, is this hand remotely functional? Will this hand be able to do something at some point? And if the answer is yes, you're mostly like, all right, well, that's good enough.
And it's true. But look, the key here that people don't think about or see at this point is that depends on you having drafted and built a good deck with cards that matter, not too much fluff, decent mana, etc. Because if you are drafting really loose and you're putting slow, non-board impacting cards, if you're making fundamental mistakes like playing 3 equipment in a 9 creature deck, if you're playing 7 card draw spells instead of the 3 or 4 that would be kind of optimal for your deck. If your mana sucks and you're just not really willing to admit it, you're playing the Devil's mana base. You got your 6/6/7 in there or whatever with a duel. These are things that will compound mulligan decisions, right? Where you keep it and you actually don't have a lot of place to go. But if you listen to this show, you put your study time in, you're asking people about your builds, you're going to have functional good decks, and then you're going to get rewarded by being able to keep more hands. Jonathan says, how do you approach analyzing the archetypes of a new set without signposts on commons? I'm speaking of Time Spiral Remastered. Will there be an episode on it? And how do you expect the draft experience to differ from the original Time Spiral block? I think we should just do a primer, right?
Yeah. So we're definitely going to want to do an episode where we basically break down the different things each color pair is doing, what the themes of the set are, and then take our stab at the top 5 commons of the set or each color and whatnot. Yeah. Funnily enough, I actually wrote this article for CFB, so I've got some legwork gone into it already.
Now maybe next week we'll do this.
And what you're going to want to do basically is look at what are the really powerful cards at common and uncommon. Don't really pay attention to rares because that doesn't really matter for a drafting overview. And are some of these cards that reward you for doing a certain thing? Like one of the themes in Time Spiral's Rebels, and guess what? They included Amru Scout and Blightspeaker, both at common. These are common Rebel searchers where they're 2 drops where you pay 4 and tap and get a Rebel that costs 3 or less out of your deck. Put it into play. Well, that alone tells me Rebels is going to be a great deck because they put a bunch of Rebels in, and these cards are fantastic if you can go get some more Rebels. It's a 2-drop creature that lets you pay 4 to put a good creature into play. So that's the sort of thing you want to look for, and anything that stands out. And the signpost uncommons, of course, make it easier because that's the whole point of them, right? They're in your face. They're like, hey, red-black does this, blue-white does this. But even among other commons, you can just look at hey, where's the power points? What are the best commons doing? What do they look like, and what do they incentivize?
Right. Next one is from James, who says, hey guys, I hope all is well. I'm a longtime listener since the return to Ravnica days. Yeah, that is actually a long time now. And first time patron. Welcome, James. Thank you for that. With Netflix making a Magic the Gathering animated series, what are you hoping to see from the show? And is there any chance we'll get an episode of LR discussing once the show is fully released? Thank you, and always be holding. I like that. Is that our new
Yeah,
are we going to be saying that to people? Do we need a hand signal to to go along with it?
I guess I hope it's good, but I'm not really too invested in it, and I would be shocked if we discussed it much on the show.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a show topic. It's not really core to what we try to do here on LR. Maybe just a short discussion if it blows up or something. But for me, I see these things as opportunities for growth. That's what my primary, that's what I want to see from this is that if you track other games that have had, content made around them on this level, Netflix or movies and stuff. I mean, you can see these franchises make huge gains in people that are interested in them. And Magic is such a rich, awesome, not only game, but intellectual property in general, with many different ways to interact with it and many different ways to enjoy it, that if they made a really awesome roughly mainstream appeal version of a show for Netflix, it would be awesome. I mean, I think we'd get a really big influx of people coming in to try to find out more about Magic, and that can only be a good thing. Next comes from Ed, who says, hi guys, I'd love to learn any helpful heuristics, being on the draw versus being on the play. I've played the game a long time, but I don't have much experience sideboarding, and on Arena, I typically play best of 1. That means I build a deck in each game, I get what I get, and I don't get really upset versus draw versus play because it chooses for you or whatever. It also means that I've never given much thought to the differences draw and play make with sideboarding choices or pretty much anything else strategically in that regard. Would love your thoughts on keeping draw and play straight in my head, especially when it matters.
If you're not choosing whether to play or draw, obviously that takes some of the decision element out. I think that on the draw, you want cheap removal gets better on the draw because the person going second is slower out the gates, but it makes up for it with an extra card. If you can then use that extra card well by playing an efficient answer to your opponent's creature, that can end up giving you a pretty good edge. In fact, one of the most common times I choose to draw is in limited when I have 3 or 4 cheap removal spells and my deck's not aggressive, because at that point, if you're going second and your 2-mana removal spell can kill their 2 or 3 drop, and then you can do that one more time, all of a sudden you're not behind because you're second and you're up a card. You can keep more land light or land heavy hands. You can just keep sketchier hands on the draw because you get an extra card to try to work those things out. And those are the main differences, I guess. When you're on the draw versus on the play, beatdown decks are a little less likely to succeed on the draw. Curving out is more effective on the play for sure.
Right. Christian says, hi guys, bit of an economic question here. Is there an MTGO equivalent of CFB's you sell, we buy?
You box, we buy.
You were pretty close, Christian. Yeah. If not, any reason why this isn't viable? I have an extensive but dormant collection on Magic Online, which I'd like to liquidate, but I don't know where to start. Any advice? Welcome. Thanks for the great content over the years. Yeah, actually, there's a lot of places that do this, Christian. MTGO Traders is kind of the big player in the market, and they have this. You can upload basically a list of your entire collection, and they'll get you a quote. Also, Card Hoarder does this. There was another big one that maybe GoatBots does. I can't remember, but yeah, this is common. Any of the larger bots that have their own website have this functionality, and you can even shop around your collection. Like you can say, hey, how much will you give me? How much, and it takes a little, somebody has to actually go through it. So you have to email them and then they'll get back if your collection's really big. If it's not really big, you can just go into the client and go into a trade and just mark all the cards you want, and it'll give you a quote for them right then and there. So it just depends on how many cards you've got. But yeah, this is totally a thing. It's not a problem at all for them to take a look, and I'm sure they'd love to have your business.
Yeah, I would recommend using MTGO Traders. I'm not like sponsored by them or anything, but I've dealt with them for a decade now. And when I actually sold my entire collection, I did it through them. It was really easy. And so they're always a pleasure to work with, super fast. And I've just always, they're just who I always shop with. So that's why I like to recommend them, just because I've always found them really good to work with. That said, I don't know what relative prices are. Shopping around for price matching is always just a good idea to do your due diligence and make sure you're not leaving money on the table. But in terms of my experiences, that I've always used MTGO Traders and always been happy with them.
And for what it's worth, it's the same for me. I know the owner, Heath, and
Heath's great.
Yeah, and they just had never had an issue. And I've used them for years and years and years. I've been playing more Arena now, but I think that there is some amount of price that I would pay for the trust that A, they're going to fulfill their end of the bargain, and B, that they're going to take care in case anything goes wrong, where I think you might be able to get a little more from some of the smaller sites. I'm not even sure of that, but that's possible. But I would recommend MTGO Traders as well, based on my experience. Okay. Andre says, what is something you learned from Magic that you use in another area of your life? Boy, there's a lot.
Yeah. What isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the avid listeners have heard this a lot, but it's still just the best lesson. So I'm just going to keep saying it. Magic has just taught me how to lose, how to deal with random variants, things I can't control, frustrations, disappointments. And look, I'm not perfect at that, because, no one is until they become truly enlightened, right? But I can tell you that the frustrations I've encountered in Magic have well set me up for the frustrations I will encounter in life. And I think I take a lot of things, with a pretty even keel, thanks to Magic.
Yeah. Magic and poker combined, they've completely changed the way that I view the world. The two big ones that come to mind are expectations. When I finally internalized that you can be a really good poker or Magic player and do everything correct and still lose, that was a big moment, because I came more from like a sports background where like that's not really how it works. Like if you do everything right in sports, it's really hard to lose. Like it's kind of zero sum, and it's just you versus, there's just no variance or very little variance in sports, generally speaking. And so that was something that I needed to kind of get my head around, was that there's times in life where you're going to do everything the way that you're supposed to or correctly or the best you can or whatever, and it will still not work. And that's just a fact. That's just how things work. And so that was a big thing to internalize, because it takes a lot of the pressure off of the second thing that I'm going to mention here, which is the focus on the part that you can control. You know, I used to be, I think like most people, just very focused on outcomes. You know, I just really was like, if the thing didn't work out the way I wanted, I would assume that I needed to change something, or that I had failed in some way or something like that. And I would put all of this stress and energy on the outcome of a thing. And when I finally realized that I could put all my energy into the upfront part about putting myself in the best position as possible, I could really let go once I let that ride. Once I said, okay, well, I'm going to see what happens now. But my job just had nothing to do with succeeding at the thing I was doing. It was just setting myself up for success. Because if you look at the numbers over the long term, if you consistently set yourself up for success, you will succeed. It's kind of like, you know, a tournament Magic player, right? If you put in really good prep time, a lot of it, you are bouncing ideas off of people, you're practicing things, you're taking notes, you're doing the things that you're not good at. You know, you're doing that very specific type of learning where you're focusing on small things that you need to improve on and repeating them until you get good at them. You know, you aren't going to just go win the next tournament. You're not going to just go top 8 the next thing, right? But if you just keep doing that, I will bet all the money that you will start top 8ing stuff and you will start to succeed. And I got to see that firsthand from players who were grinding and who really weren't quite good enough, and then started to get on testing teams, and then, you know, started to do all of the things necessary. And it's like, oh, look, they're platinum. Oh, look, they're in the MPL. Oh, they're a rival. And it's like, when you think about it, they don't win any given tournament. They don't top 8 any given tournament, but it's just that sort of excellence over time is really unstoppable. It really is. Like, as long as you just keep going and just keep doing it the same way, you will float to the top, even though any one example, that isn't necessarily the case. Alex says, do you have any advice on how to make the best use of the Arena client for Limited? And the answer is yes, I do. Go to Going Optimal. That's Ryan Spain's stream and his kind of entity. And he has a spreadsheet and a full kind of a course almost, if you will, on how to manage gold particularly. He started his stream a few years ago now. And when he started it, he got the $5 welcome bundle on Arena. And that is the only money he's put in on that. And he drafts on it, and he's drafted on it since then. And he drafts on it on his stream, on his free account. He also recommends getting a second account so that you can take advantage of the gold incentives that they do every day. And if you have any questions, Ryan's really great about it. Again, it's Going Optimal on Twitch, and he streams Monday through Friday. And so you can ask him questions or check out the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet allows you to punch in, for different types of events, like your expected win rate, like just a ballpark of how good, do you think you're about a 50-50 player? Do you think you're a bit better than that, way better than that, worse than that? And it'll show you you're way better than that. Yes. Yeah. It'll show you how often you'll be able to draft for free if you do the things that he says to do. So that's what I would do.
I can also give you myself, some advice on how to not optimize your Arena spending habits, given that I drop from drafts frequently after playing one round. I don't buy the gold thing in the shop.
Even when it's just pure free.
I just have no patience for any of that. Look, I actually used to do a ton of trade grinding. That was actually how I really got a lot of my Magic collection, how I financed going to some of these tournaments. Me and actually David Ochoa used to just always be hustling and making sure we were doing our best to get value, because this was kind of our jobs here as teenagers. And I'm just very far from that now. Yeah. I'm the opposite now.
Well, yeah, and it's a time conversion thing for you, right? Because, now you have good jobs, right? You work really hard. And so, you have some more income that you can spend to translate that into time that you can use to work more or spend time with your kid or, your loved ones. And, those type of things come into play where at some point you just start to offload those smaller like the thing where it's like, I'm going to turn this much gold into this much gold. How much money is that worth? It's probably worth $1 or less or something like that, right? But if you were 17, 19, you would have done that, So it's just it's a progression.
Still probably worth doing now, given that I'm already in the client, and all that.
That particular one is because it's like literally 2 clicks. Yeah. But I mean, also, like, I don't do it either, but it's not for those reasons. It's just because keeping up, like, the only way I'll ever do it is if Amazonian tweets it, because she always tweets whenever the free stuff's up. And if I happen to see it and I'm on the client, then I'll do it. But I'm not, it's more just like, how many things do you want to track and manage? Right.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I'm just going to offload that one. Like, I'm fine spending a few extra bucks if that's what it costs me to do that, to not have to track it. This next question actually comes from Marshall. Hey, nice name. What are some of your favorite 2-color archetypes that you've played over the years? I want to build a greatest hits of retail draft cube and could use some opinions. This is interesting. I wish Marshall would have put his Twitter here, because we could have our listeners chime in with some of their favorites to get a nice big list to choose from. But I don't know. What comes to mind for you, Luis? Anything? I know one that comes to mind for me, although I can never remember the formats or whatever. But do you remember the Evolve deck, the blue-green Evolve?
Yeah. Back in
Gatecrash. Yeah. I really like that deck. I don't know why that came to mind, but I definitely like that.
I did really enjoy both Affinity and Mirrodin and the Dampen Thought deck in Champions, but they don't really fit for this. Let's not.
Are those 2-color archetypes, or are they not?
Dampen Thought was blue-white primarily. Sometimes
but it needed like multiple Dampen Thoughts,
it needed multiples for sure, and like all these cards were super linear. Like, they don't really fit. Like, Cloudfin Raptor, an evolved creature, would be good in a lot of different cube contexts, but like Dampen Thought's good in exactly the one, so it's not like a great fit in that sense.
Yeah.
I think Red-Black Sacrifice in general I always find a really fun archetype, and there was like M10, I think, or M11. No, it had to be M11, whichever one had Reassembling Skeleton for the first time.
Oh yeah,
in Active Trees, and Red-Black Sac was really fun in that deck. I actually thought that's like probably its high point, even though that archetype just never seems to be good these days.
No, they don't push it quite hard enough. Yeah, I would have to spend some time, Marshall, to really think of that. But the main question is just like, do they translate to a cube? Because that's a part of the thing that would need to be like, this also would just produce a bunch of kind of interesting cards, but you could also draft it. Because some of them get so narrow, One that might be cool is Red-Green Werewolves from Innistrad. That gives you some neat flip cards and stuff, but the mechanic doesn't require necessarily other werewolves. Brian says, pick order for a fight. Marshall, BK, Luis, Riley, Dennis, Ben Stark, and Ryan.
I think I've gotta have you first.
Yeah, because I'm just big. Yeah,
you're quite large. Yeah.
I think you would be scrappy. I think you would actually be low-key scrappy. Like, all the times that you like threw Antonio on the coffee table when you were younger was just like, training for a future fight, right?
He's going to listen to LR, so I got to set the record straight. He's the one who slammed me through the coffee table.
Oh, he threw you on it. Oh,
and this is my younger brother.
That's right. Yeah.
But I don't want to be
this
called
is
out.
after this is after you threw some coins in his cereal, I believe.
Okay, I flipped one coin, and it happened to land in his cereal bowl, and I happened to be obnoxious about it. And
he happened to slam you through the coffee.
And we happened to call our parents who were at the store, like, hey, can you buy some wood glue? And they were like, what the hell?
Oh, God. Yeah, so me than you. Safe to say that Dennis and Riley are just last, right?
Yeah. Whether or not that's true, and I wouldn't even say it necessarily is, there's no way that we can look at ourselves in the mirror if we don't rank them last and give them something to get mad about.
Now this gets interesting because we've got Ryan Spain, who's also a big dude. He's like 6'4", like but he's also like one of the most peaceful.
He's like the nicest dude I've ever met in my life.
Like, he's a pure pacifist. Like, he just would not fight you, but he could definitely like beat up Ben for sure. Yeah. So I'm going to put Ryan. So me, you, Ryan. So here's a big question: BK and Ben Stark.
It's tough because BK has done a lot of sports in his life. I mean, Ben has too, but BK is a bigger dude than Ben. Ben is from Florida, but
Yeah, he's got to have some scrap.
I feel like the Floridians tend to try to grift you more than like assault you. So,
oh, good. We've got the Floridians take on the show this week. Perfect.
I didn't invent Florida Man. Florida Man always existed. I'm going to go with BK here.
Okay, so me, you, Ryan, BK, Ben, and then Dennis and Riley are just sort of holding each other in the corner, whimpering. All right, we got it. This next one comes from Cal, who says, "Hey LSV, what's your favorite class to fire up in Slay the Spire, and what's your go-to favorite build for each of the 4 classes?" Don't even know what this is, but
yeah, this will be something I'll tackle. I like my favorite class is probably the Watcher, because I like flipping between the two states a lot. Watcher is also happens to be the most busted one. Then probably the Silent, and I love the Shiv builds in the Silent because you just cast a million spells. I'm not even going to bother explaining this to you, Marshall. You can just zone out for a little bit. You can just pretend like I'm me when you're talking about it.
I'll have a sip of my Honor Palmer while you.
But I like Defect a lot too. That one I haven't played quite as much, though I do enjoy when I play it. And then Ironclad, I just don't find to be that interesting. Like every now and then you get a cool armor build or something like that. But for the most part, Ironclad, it's like the tankiest, most straightforward class, and I'm not. I tend not to play Ironclad all that much.
Was that the end, or
that was it?
Okay, I wasn't sure like how to end a sentence with Ironclad. Cody says, "Hey guys, I know you've got to be Magic collectors if you play the game. For both of you, what are some of your favorite parts of your Magic collection?"
I mean, I have a couple, like in terms of like sentimentality, the cards. So my path to playing competitive Magic was through Vintage in a kind of weird way, where the Eudaimonia, this store in the Bay Area, would run these Power 9 tournaments. Once a month, they would run a tournament for a piece of the Power 9, and they would do them in order, and then the last one was the Lotus, and that was like the big event of the year. And me and David Ochoa and our friend Jeff Huang, we would always play at them. And in fact, they would make a poster with all the winners, and at the end of the year, I have a picture of this poster somewhere.
Oh, I gotta see this.
Yeah, I'll send it to you afterwards. I'll tweet it to you actually, so people can see it. It was like, for the winners, it would like put the piece of power on the winners, and it was like David Ochoa, Luis Scott-Vargas, David Ochoa, Jeff Huang, someone else, Luis Scott-Vargas, David Ochoa. Like,
wow.
Like we were good at Vintage, you know. We played a lot. We took it really seriously, and then from there we went to PTQing. And I have this like Japanese Yawgmoth will that's just so incredibly beat up that I've cast hundreds of times, and I just love it. I'm never going to part with it for any amount. Like it's not even worth anything, but it's just like means so much to me.
Oh, that's great.
I also have an Alpha Lotus, which I like a lot too. So,
oh, you like that, do you?
Well, it casts the Yawgmoth will. It's actually the one that casts the Yawgmoth will.
and strangely, the Yawgmoth will is what casts the Lotus too.
Yep, there we go.
For me, two come to mind. One of them are really simple. They're my beta basics. There's nothing that brings me stronger nostalgia than those basic lands, and they're still relevant because I get to use them to play today. So that's great. And then the other one is my Klug Altars Mana War, which is just it's just unbelievable. It's actually just behind me, sitting next to the original art for Mana War that I have, and this is one that my friends got for me from Eric Klug. And if you've never heard of him, he's the best card alterer ever. He's the GOAT, and his stuff is just mind blowing. I've always wanted to own one of his, but just never could quite figure out, like, well, what would I actually want to get that I'd want to keep? Like, I don't, like we talked about Commander, maybe I'd have him do a Commander one for me, but like, no, that's not really, I don't play it enough. So but they got this for me, and it's my favorite Mana War. So it's the Portal one, but he painted it to look like, kind of like a treasure map. And it has all these little visual cues and these little references that were put in it for stuff in my life, like a thing referencing my dad. And, like it has the island, my favorite island artwork is like floating in the background from that beta island that I just mentioned. Like it just so many really cool little touches on a great piece from Eric. And I'll put a link to Eric's Twitter in the show notes, because if you're ever interested in a card alter, Eric he's unparalleled. He's also a very good limited player, by the way. Yeah, he drafts all the time. He's a huge limited junkie, and he loves Cube, and he pops in my chat every once in a while. And yeah, he's just one of the really great people in the Magic community. And so I feel honored, honestly, to have a piece of his work. So those are the two things that come to mind for me. A couple more questions here before we call it good. Grayson says, "Hey fellas, this one's for Marshall. In the past few years, I've started to get into watches. Oh, I like this. And I know that's an interest of yours too." He says, "I was shocked to see you pop up on the Hodinky YouTube feed a while back." Yeah, I did do a video that they put up, so that was cool. I know you're more into building and repairing. Do you have any tips for getting started there? I do, Grayson. I made a video actually for my YouTube channel for Wristwatch Revival, the one where I do the rebuilds of the restorations of the vintage watches. The one of the very few videos that's not a rebuild or a restoration is actually the tools that you need to get started in the hobby. And I go through all of the tools that you need to take apart and put back together a watch movement. And I break down whether to get like the more expensive version or if you can get away with the cheaper one, because there's kind of a lot on the market. So that's a really good place to start. I put a lot of time and effort into that because there wasn't something like that on YouTube that I felt was up to par. And I really wanted people to have a place to go for if they're starting out to get them set on the right path. So I put that on there. So if you go to Wristwatch Revival on YouTube, you can find that there. Tabletop Tycoon says, "How do you recommend balancing dedicating time to the hobby of Magic when life and work get busy? Tips and tricks for playing regularly when you have relatively little time." I mean, it is easier to do that now more than ever because of Arena. Like, particularly, like if you hop into an Arena draft, you're going to be in there really quickly. The draft will take 15 minutes or whatever it takes. And that's the biggest time commitment you have in most scenarios. Cause especially if you do the best of one drafts, you can divide it up into little chunks. And that's, from what I've heard, like when people have kids and stuff like that are kind of unpredictable, where like you can sit down to do a draft, but you may need to get up and take care of something. That sounds like about the best case scenario. Cause even in your worst spot where like you have to go handle something and you can't finish out your game, it's just one game. Like it doesn't sink your entire draft. Yeah. I think that for me, if you can try to like schedule things so that you set appointments with yourself, like it might sound a little, it's funny coming from me because like in a lot of ways I don't do this, but for the things that I care about, I do. Like, like I've been trying to go on a walk every day consistently, and every day between like 10 and 11, I'll go on this walk. And that really helps me consistently do the thing that I want to do, and I prioritize. And I know that Magic's not going to be your highest priority, of course. We're talking about a hobby here. We're not talking about your job or your family or whatever. But if you can plan, like what I find is like, let's say you say, all right, every Thursday I want to do a draft that night. Like I want to go in Arena and I want to play from like 9 to 11 or 10 to midnight or whatever. You can then figure out and find out what things do I have to do to make that possible. Do I have to get my work done so that I don't have anything looming over my head? Do I need to make sure to do a good job cooking dinner and washing the dishes so I can, I feel like I can take the rest of the night off? And then when you do those, when you have a goal to work towards, this reward, right? Because you want to play Magic at this point. I mean, that's the question you're asking. I find that I will sometimes put more work into making sure I get the things done that I need to get done so I can do the thing. If you say, I really want to draft. Like I want to take some time on Saturday to draft. And okay, well, in order for that to happen, what would I need to do during the week to make it so I could, guilt-free take the time on Saturday to draft? And if you can figure out the answer to that question, then and have yourself do those things, then that really helps you be efficient. And if you don't know the answer and you're not going to feel good about it, then you kind of got to untangle that too, because that I think that life is a lot harder when you can't set up stuff like that. Like part of the problem with working from home for a lot of people, especially in jobs that kind of bleed outside of working hours, you always feel like you could be doing something. I know you and I have talked about this a lot where,
it's 8 p.m. What are you going to do? Well, you could watch a basketball game, but you kind of feel like you should finish that watch video.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like, and that's something we all have to kind of deal with in our own ways. But if you have a job that kind of ends when the office is closed, you know, like you work between 9 to 5 and you don't work outside of that, then that has its own restrictions, but it also has its upsides of like, you just don't worry in the evening that you should be doing something more useful.
Yeah. I think that to back up your point there, it kind of stresses other things. When you've got a lot more on your plate at any given time, it can actually say, well, you need to be more organized then. And then you can still find the time. But if you're kind of just floating through your day, oh, I got to do this, I better go do that, those times are going to shrink away a little bit. But again, Arena, definitely the way to go for that. One more question here. This one comes from our friend Nikolai Bolas, who says, there are many players who have been playing consistently for years and years, but who still never reach the high skill level demonstrated by professionals. When you're playing to improve, is there a difference in the way you practice? How do you make sure that you get better over time instead of just spinning your wheels? Great question.
Yeah, I mean, how good someone is at a certain task, whether that's magic or anything that requires expertise, isn't just a function of time, because time definitely matters. No one's elite at something without spending thousands of hours on it, as long as it's something deep enough to be worth being elite in. Except the prodigies, every now and then you have someone who just picks things up and knows it right away. But also, not everyone who spent tons of time on something is good at something. There's a lot of people who've been doing something for 20 years and are just not that good at it. Let's not, that it's not a guarantee. I think that I've noticed a couple things that kind of are required. First of all, is you have to want it. Like this has to be something you actively want. It has to be your goal. If your goal is to get better and improve, then that is the first step towards doing those things. Because there's a lot of people who they just like playing Magic, and that's awesome. That's just a great way to play Magic. They're not going to necessarily get that much better because that's just not how they're thinking about the game, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're asking from a perspective of like, okay, how do I get better over time? Well, the fact that you're asking that question is a good first step.
Yeah.
The second is I find having like specific goals and milestones and benchmarks are also pretty valuable. Like the people I know who are the most motivated are like, I really want to win a PTQ and play at a Pro Tour. I really want to get on the train. I want to do well enough to get hit bronze or silver or gold or whatever before they made that not a thing anymore. I want a day to a Grand Prix. Those people have something actionable to work towards. And what I also find is most of those people, when they hit that goal, they can then set another further goal and chain them. Though I know some people, and I have tons of respect for this, who are like, I just want to queue for a PT. That's my goal. They do it. They show up. They say, hey, you know what? I'm glad I did this. Now I can dial it back down because I reached my goal, and getting to the next step is not what I'm interested in doing. And then once you have the desire and you have a goal, there's a lot of ways to practice and get better. I do recommend a balanced approach where you're watching good players play. I think, Ben Stark's stream is very good. Like, he'll get you really strong on the fundamentals because he explains everything he's doing. Like
exhaustively,
he really explains everything he's doing. Yes, I enjoy watching Ben stream to chat and just hang out with Ben for a little bit, and I usually chat when I'm there. But it's not a stream I can watch 5 hours of because, like, yes, he really just goes through every decision in painstaking detail. But that's an awesome resource. You'd be foolish not to take advantage of it if that's something you want to improve in. Reading articles can obviously be great. Like, there's a lot of people who write a lot. I credit a lot of my development in Magic to reading like Gadiel and Zvi and some of the writers who were kind of around back when I was really on the grind to improve. And then playing a lot, but not just kind of mindlessly playing, just playing and trying to learn from it. Like, you can't be on all the time. Like, when I say actively learning and trying to identify mistakes and work on them, I'm not saying you should do that 100% of your Magic playing time because you'll burn out and stop really learning much. You have to spend a good 30% of your time just kind of playing and chilling, and as kind of relaxing and letting your subconscious take over. But a good amount of the time, it shouldn't all be that, because we know a lot of people who, they fire up Arena and they kind of just click their way through a bunch of Magic. Yeah. And again, a great thing to do if you want to relax and enjoy Magic. And if you want to improve, you have to be a little bit more of an active participant of how am I getting better? What am I doing? I actually think that Discord is an incredible resource because you can get your friends on Discord and they'll watch you play, and you can talk about your games, and you'd be like, hey, what would you do here right in the moment? And like, I think that's a really cool thing. Like I know, I spend a decent amount of time just screwing around with like BK on Discord and watching him cube draft, and like we talk through picks and plays and stuff. And like, that does make us both better. We're still learning from each other, Yeah. I hope he's not listening because I would be admitting things. But I think that there's a lot of ways you can approach it. But yes, it takes time. But certainly the time is not the only ingredient. And we know tons and tons of people who, they put a lot of time into it, but they don't really like push themselves, and they're not really using that time to actually improve. And that's fine if that's not what you want, but don't assume that, all right, if I just play Magic for 30 hours a week for 2 years, I'll be great. It's like, well, no, you're not going to be.
Yeah, it's exactly what Nikolai said, which is that you do see that people kind of hit their natural peak and then they stay there.
Exactly.
Unless they decide to actively participate in improving, and some people is higher than others, it's just one of those things. Emergency. One last question from Mike, because our friend Ray Trago said, this is Pack One Pick One question of this thread, not close. And that is, Mike says, I've only been listening to LR for less than a year, so I've been catching up on some of your back catalog. My question is, so what happened to the soundboard? That's on you, Luis.
Well, kind of on me.
This is your problem.
We stopped recording using Zencaster, though it was also because Zencaster itself was having issues, and I don't really know what those issues were. Yeah,
it's called drift. Basically, the files would slowly get out of sync, and it was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah. So because we're not using Zencaster, I don't have access to the soundboard anymore. I've had a number of people really talk about missing the soundboard and the two cool dudes intro. So maybe I'll pull the sound file off that, and we'll see what it can do.
Okay. All right. Well, let's call it good there. Good show, Luis. Again, I mentioned it before, but if we didn't get to your question, it's not because we selected it out. It's because we ran out of time. So we'll either try to get to them at a later show or keep them in your head or on a clipboard or whatever, because I don't mind at all when people ask the same question again if it didn't get answered, because there's just only so many we can actually get to over the course of a show. And we like to go deep on these questions too. We'd prefer to take the time on the questions that have a lot more depth to them, rather than try to rush through and get to as many as possible, but give you, less good answers for each one. So again, we'll try our best to get through more of them on the next one. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to this show at lrcast.com. All the links to, my stream. I have a diligent stream schedule, and I know you do too as well, Luis, with your promise of.
Okay. Well, I did, give people a brief schedule this week, and I have stuck to it so far, including I'm going to be cube drafting with special guest BK this Friday. I will always tweet out when I go live. So if you follow me on Twitter, I try not to.
Is that what you think a schedule is?
Well, it's not a schedule, but I'm saying I didn't finish my sentence. I will always tweet out when I go live. What I'm going to try to do is at the start of each week on like Monday, try to estimate what my schedule is going to be like. And then if I say I'm going to stream on a certain day, I'm going to try pretty hard to stick to that. What might end up happening is I'll say that, hey, I think I'm going to stream on Monday and Thursday this week, but then also just maybe stream on a Wednesday as well, depending, on how my days line up. I can't always predict those, but I'm actually trying to stream a bit more. I've been liking the formats. I've been really enjoying Magic, and I don't know. I've been enjoying streaming. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I stream once a week, so my schedule is pretty straightforward.
I also highly prioritize going live about 20 minutes before Marshall. So
yeah, I know. And then you blame me for it on Twitter too. But anyway, lrcast.com is where to go for all of that stuff. Don't forget Channel Fireball as well for really anything you need Magic related. We talk about selling cards back. You can go through card by card and see what the prices are, or you can even do U-Box We Buy, where you just take your collection, throw it in a box, and then they'll give you a quote, and you can decide if you'd like to sell. That's all Channel Fireball, and remember the affiliate code LR if you do end up buying anything from CFP. We appreciate you using that. That's going to do it for this one. We'll see you next week.
So I've recently discovered a new cooking obsession.
Ooh, what do you got?
Chimichurri. So chimichurri is a kind of like
God.
Argentinian, like kind of steak sauce. Sauce is not the right word. It's kind of it's a topping.
Dip? How do you topping? Yeah, you can use it for lots of stuff. Yeah.
So I can give you here's also how I kind of approach recipes. I'll look up recipes and try to find one that it looks good, right? If I want to make something. I'll kind of follow it depending on like using my judgment because cooking has a little bit of flexibility when it comes to that. And then the second time I make something, I usually like look up the recipe. Then by the third time, I'm usually good, and I approximate a lot of stuff anyway. And chimichurri is actually great for that. So at its base, it's like a parsley and garlic sauce, and it's like that kind of like green sauce. And you see it put on steak primarily, but it goes great on a lot of stuff. It's so easy to make, and it's just incredibly good. I feel like it's completely leveled up my steak experience. I use it on shrimp or eggs. So basically what it is chopped parsley, chopped garlic, olive oil, salt, pepper, some red pepper flakes, some oregano, and a little bit of like red wine vinegar. But you could leave out an ingredient or two and it would be fine. You can add in if you want to add in like some like lemon juice or something, that's not too bad though. I'm sure the chimichurri purists will get mad at me. But basically you just chop up a bunch of parsley, chop up a bunch of garlic. I put way more than the recipe says because that's just what you have to do with the garlic and recipes. The recipes are a suggestion. The real life hack is just 3xing the amount of garlic.
Yeah.
You just chop that up, put it in a bowl, grind some salt and pepper on it, put some olive oil in so it like kind of submerges them. Mix it around, put in a splash of red wine vinegar, and that's it. I usually make it the day I'm gonna want to eat it and or the day before even, and let it sit in the fridge for the flavors to kind of coalesce. But I've been loving it. It takes literally 5 minutes to make. It's just not hard, and it feels fancy and it tastes really, really good. It's just incredible. For some reason parsley is just, I don't know, as a base for a sauce, it just really does the thing you want it to do.
Super underrated herb. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been loving it, and you can do your own modifications and all that, but I just highly recommend it because it's something I've now started making about once a week just to have on hand. So it's like, I made a sweet potato and I put a bunch of chimichurri on it and it was great.